She's the founder of Maui Waui Hawaiian Smoothies. You can relate to that. But she's got that started, I believe, in 1983. Is that right? She's also started Green Seed Franchise Development and is the host of Juniper Tree Radio program. Jill and her husband created the first retail smoothie concept back in 1983 when they started blending their own smoothie concoction in an old wooden shack at fairs and festivals. I think that's what might be here, right?
Yeah.
Shown on the first slide. At the time, they had no idea that their little part-time business, again, that's often what entrepreneurship is, a little part-time business, would grow into an international franchise organization supporting 660 franchises in 9 countries around the world. In addition to protecting and promoting the Maui Waui brand, Jill formed Green Seed Franchise Development, so this concept of knowing how to do franchises, a company that helps innovative entrepreneurs build a solid foundation for future franchise acquisitions, then for aggressive expansion. Jill's passion and hobby is in collecting philosophical fragments and quotes. I bet you'll hear a few today. And many biographies of inspiring people, which she shares in her iTunes radio broadcast, The Juniper Tree Show. Jill's the mother of 3 children and currently resides in Salt Lake City. And I also want to just not only welcoming her, but thank Gene Brown, one of our new faculty members here in the Entrepreneurship Center, for inviting her. So please join me, though, today in welcoming Jill Summerhays. About disadvantages. Oh, it fell off. One more time.
I don't know if it's on. It's on.
Sorry.
Talk amongst yourselves.
You're all happy to be here, right? Let's see. That'll work a little bit better. Want to just say something?
Testing, testing.
Work okay?
Got it? Okay.
So you don't have to worry about this microphone anymore, but just
Okay.
that one.
Okay. Thank you, Brother Tanner. Aloha. Aloha. That's good. This is really a privilege for me to come and speak to you. Thank you, Jean, for inviting me. And it's always really nice to take a moment and look back on our journey and the mistakes that we've made. We've learned a lot over the years, and hopefully what I share with you will help you so that you don't make the same mistakes that we do. Before I get started, I'd like to say that although I'm the lucky one to be here, this business really is a product of many people. My husband, Jeff, and I started it in 1983, as you can see. I have a partner, Michael Haith, and then a great management team in Denver, Colorado, and then a lot of employees and many, many franchisees who work really hard in our system to uphold the brand. So I really want to acknowledge them as well, because it is a collective effort. In any business, it's really the case that you need a lot of really people who are on your side and who believe in your vision to support you. So I was invited to speak to you today about our business and how we got started. And my intention is to tell our story, but also to review the importance of proper branding, identity, and logo. And I believe that these are the foundations for a successful startup. So today we're going to use our imagination and pretend that this modern day advice is taken directly from the ancient kahunas. Let's see if I have a slide. No. Kahunas. Now, does that look like an ancient Hawaiian? Because my son tells me it looks like a caveman. Regardless, use your imagination. Now, there's many different definitions and misuses of the word kahuna, but the kahunas I'm referring to in this presentation are the old Hawaiian kahunas. Who were they? This description of kahunas was taken from a historical survey. Kahunas were the expert of old Hawaii. They were experts in religion, health, crafts, science, psychology, magic, and I'm going to add business. A kahuna was a title like a PhD or an MD. Now, kahunas, they could be male or female. They underwent intensive and extensive training before they were recognized in their community as experts in the field. And they were always attuned to the spiritual side of their expertise as well as the material side. And I recognize that there are probably a few modern-day kahunas in the audience today. We can learn a lot from them. Now, I am a mainlander, a haole, and in no way consider myself a kahuna. However, in the 30 years of trying to build a brand, and in our businesses, I've learned a few tricks. Things I wish I had known, I hope I can share with you, and hopefully save you a lot of money and a lot of time. So, before I go on, I must say that my husband and I were dreamers from the beginning. We were two dreamers that got together. We really wanted to create something. And so, in this way, we were really motivated. We started our retail smoothie event business in 1983 at a time when smoothies were non-existent, almost non-existent. And we could never have anticipated that the smoothie industry alone would become a $2.7 billion industry, which it currently is today, which is astounding to me. So we were newly married, and literally it was the day after we were married that we started thinking up our idea. It was supposed to be a little seasonal part-time business for me, and we had no aspirations for anything else. So 1983 is when we started. Raise your hand if you were alive in 1983. Few of you. Okay. For those of you who weren't born, and those of you who were, let's tell you a little bit about what the culture was like then in the early 80s. In 1983, if you can believe this, this is really shocking to me, there was no such thing as internet or personal computers. But the first mobile phone was introduced by Motorola. Oh, let me scan through these really quickly. I should probably say that we are a special event. We started out as a special event business, and we decided that we would go to where the people are instead of expecting them to come to us, especially since nobody knew what smoothies were. So this, what you see up there, is actually our very first day of sales in 1983. We're both back there working together. That was the last time we decided we'd work together. And this is what our kiosks currently look like today. And that's just a product shot of what we sell. This is a current day special event model. And this, I believe, is a store that we have in Ireland. So let's go to 1983. There was no such thing as internet or personal computers, but the first mobile phone was introduced by Motorola that year. Do you remember this one? It was about as big as a brick, and people would carry it around if they had really big purses. The last release of 8-track tapes went out. Has anyone ever seen an 8-track tape? I've not seen any for years. We wore parachute pants and leg warmers, big hair, and even bigger hair bows. We wore shoulder pads, really, really big shoulder pads, and side ponytails. We also, men, the boys, had mohawks. Slap bracelets, has anyone seen those? You'd slap them on your wrist, whoops. What have I done? There we go. We said phrases like, don't have a cow, and totally awesome. And Cabbage Patch Dolls and My Little Pony were big hits back then. We listened to Lionel Richie, Phil Collins, The Police, and the Moody Blues on the radio. And Dannon Yogurt introduced a product for children, fruit-flavored yogurt. Up until then, it was just the white, plain yogurt that you could get in health food stores. Ocean Spray released the very first juice box, and that's the culture that Maui Wowie Smoothies had their very first customer. It started with a little idea that was brewing in my head since the late 60s. Anyone alive in the 60s? A few hands. I grew up in Southern California where small health food stores were popping up. And my mom, she was a health food foodie, and she was before her time actually. And she took me to a health food store and propped me up at the counter and gave me my very first smoothie. It stayed in my mind for many, many years. And then when I went away to college at BYU in Provo, I was looking around for healthy stuff, and there was no healthy drink options at all. In fact, we would have laughed our heads off if we'd ever thought that we would actually bottle water and then try to sell it. So later, when I met my future husband, we were starting to throw ideas around and what kind of business we might start together. He was from a restaurant family, and he was managing a popular restaurant at the time. So on our honeymoon, literally it was the first day after we were married, we started working on a smoothie recipe. How's that for nerdy? We used his restaurant experience to create a system, something that would work really efficiently and serve a lot of people really, really fast. Now in the 80s, as you can see by that shack, you could get away with just about anything. You could sell smoothies out of an old wooden shack, and you didn't even need to have any water, and you didn't need to worry about washing your hands or anything. There were no food labeling requirements at all. There was no nutritional accountability that we were aware of, and the health department didn't look over our shoulder. And there were no calorie counts. It's amazing to think about how much we've changed. Food allergies like gluten intolerance and lactose intolerance weren't even named at the time. We just had stomach aches and we didn't bother to wonder why. In fact, it was so loose that if we were asked exactly what this Maui Wowie stuff was that we were making in the back of his restaurant at midnight, we could just say, none of your business, don't have a cow, it's going to be totally awesome. And we really did stay up all night creating and mixing these formulas up in big kettles. Peter Drucker, one of the most respected voices in business, wrote, "Market research does not work. One cannot do market research on something that does not exist." And although inexperienced, really inexperienced in business and launching into a new enterprise where there were no patterns to follow, there were a few things that we were absolutely sure about. Number one, we knew we needed to have a quality product. It had to taste good, and we had to be able to sell a lot of it. Number two, it needed to be simple enough that we could do it really, really fast. And number three, we needed to create a demand through value and a memorable experience. After all, why would anyone ever spend a whole $1.75 on a drink? And no one except a few hippies had ever heard of the word smoothie or Maui Wowie. But we were young and naive, and we had no reason to believe that we wouldn't succeed. Now, they say that the definition of an expert is to have made all the mistakes possible in your given field. And so, little by little, we became experts in the fast food special event industry. Science author Thomas Kuhn said, "It takes 30 years for any new concept to gain acceptance." 30 years. We fit this timeline, but I don't think it holds true anymore, because at the time that he said that, we didn't have the aggressive social media options that we have today. So we started blending up these smoothies in this old wooden shack, relying purely on word of mouth. That was all we had. And the other thing we did was like I mentioned before, we went to where the people are. We didn't expect them to come to us. So eventually, we grew little by little and grew into a worldwide franchise organization. We did it simply by trying to improve our brand and streamline our system little by little. We hawked our cars, we hawked our home, we maxed out our credit cards to finance this venture. In 30 years, we've been plagued with crop failures, weather issues, banana embargoes, freezes that destroyed the citrus groves and strawberry fields. You name it, we've had it. We've almost gone belly up 100 times. As a new business in virgin territory with an unknown future in franchising, our job back then was to make every mistake possible so that a tried and true comprehensive operation system could evolve. Now, it's interesting to note that when people buy a franchise, they're not buying the product. They're buying the brand, and they're buying your system. So it's all about the system. All we knew at the time was that we had to work really, really hard to figure out how to streamline and monkey-proof our system and make it easy enough so that anybody can do it exactly as we did. Here's a picture of our business in Saudi Arabia today. You can see there's two of them, two stores side by side. One is for the women and children and family, and the other one is for men alone. Mary Kay Ash was the founder of a billion-dollar cosmetic company, Mary Kay. And after being repeatedly told that her business plan would not work, she chose the bumblebee as her company mascot. Because of its tiny wings and heavy body, aerodynamically, the bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly. But the bumblebee doesn't know this, and so it flies anyway. I love that. So we worked really hard, and one of my very favorite experiences and memories of our years of hard work was one night when we both got home from working. We were blending smoothies for 12 hours all day long without a break, and we were just covered with head to toe. We were sticky and hot, and it was just a mess. And we took all of our money, our pile of money, and we threw it out on our linoleum kitchen floor, and then we just kind of got down on the floor and rolled around in it and got it, and we were covered with money until it was sticking to us, kind of like what you might see on a game show. And that was really fun to do, but you know, it became I thought about that for many years afterwards, and it became kind of my own little private mascot, that image of me covered with money. So if you start a business, you're going to get really emotionally attached to it. It really does become like your business. And after we got all of our systems in place and went to a franchise attorney who told us it would never work, he said, I've never seen a franchise in operation that didn't have territories. And our goal, our dream was that people would buy a franchise, they'd be able to take their kiosk on the road and go cross country making smoothies at any event that they wanted to do. What we found was that there's enough for them to do in their own area that most people didn't hit the road, but it is still a very mobile business. So after he told us that it wouldn't work, we went forward anyway. And when we did sit down and sell our first franchise, it really did feel like we were selling off our baby. It was really an emotional time. But then every time we did it again, it got a little easier to sell the baby. And our franchisees, we found, were actually following our system, and they were changing their careers and their lives for better. So that then became the reward, to see other people prosper in a business that worked so well for us. With 660 franchises in 9 countries, Maui Wowie now has a unique infrastructure in place, all relying on great communication. We have a good management team that we call the mainland, and we have good communication with our franchisees and a training program complete with a detailed operations manual. and other resources. And this year was exciting because we provided iPads to all of the new franchisees when they would come to training, and everything would be loaded up on that iPad, from the brand book to the operations manual. All of the resources that they would need now they could get from this iPad. And it's just amazing what we can do now with technology. So this year I started Green Seed Franchise Development to help other aspiring and innovative business owners to do the foundational work for actually starting their own franchise system. There's sure a lot of work that needs to be done. I look at people who have a successful business already in operation, and then how to then set your systems up and streamline it so that it can be easily duplicated. I've learned that the most creative minds are not necessarily the most organized minds. Usually they're very chaotic minds because you're trying to do everything. That's in the E-myth, isn't it, Jean? So building a business methodically with the end clearly in mind is critical, but is not always the case, as with our concept. We were lucky because the time was right, but I believe if we did the same things now, we'd be run over by somebody much more aggressive than we were. Now I want to tell you what the big kahunas, back to the kahunas, I want to tell you what they have to say about brand, identity, and logo. And if you can get these concepts down and working for you, I think you will have the foundation pieces for starting a successful business model. So what is brand? The kahunas say that brand is the perceived, emotional, corporate image as a whole. So it's how you perceive it. A brand has a set of personality traits, like a person. And a good brand captures the attention, the imagination, and the emotion of the customer. We took our gamble and based our business idea on this Hawaiian island theme as part of our brand, because in the 80s, a Hawaiian vacation was about the most exotic vacation that you could ever dream of taking. Everyone dreamt of spending a lazy day at the beach with a good book. So we linked our business with thoughts of immense pleasure. Rachel Fields wrote a verse about how she felt after visiting the Hawaiian Islands many years ago. She said, "If you've ever slept on an island, you'll never be quite the same. You may look as you looked the day before and go by the same old name. You may bustle about the streets or shop, you may sit at home and sew, but you'll see blue water and whirling seagulls wherever your feet may go." Now, does that short verse evoke some emotion in you? It certainly does in me. So a company brand is not like the brand that a farmhand would stamp on a cow. A brand is not a logo. A brand is not a color scheme, uniforms, or font styles. A brand is not even your products. But all these things work together to help build the brand, the culture, and the perceived emotional image, but they are not the brand. They are touch points that reinforce and strengthen the brand. So when I buy a pair of Tom's shoes, do you all know what Tom's shoes are? Yeah? I buy these Tom's shoes because I associate them with a kind of a humanitarian feeling, because I know that every time I buy a pair of shoes for myself, Tom buys a pair of shoes for someone, a child in a third world country. And that's important to me. Now, when I bought my iPad, it came in a really nice box. Have you noticed the good packaging that Apple does? And I associated the iPad with simplicity and efficiency. It had kind of a power to the people kind of feel. And I noticed when I traveled that all the business people had iPads, and I thought that they looked professional and really cool. Honestly, that's the truth. So, Tom's shoes and iPads are expensive, but I wasn't really spending my money on the products. I was spending my money on the feeling associated with the products. I was buying the brand. Can you think of some examples of good or bad brands? Anybody?
Michael Jordan.
What's that?
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan. What's the feeling you get from that? From that you could fly. Okay, great. I know you've all thought of something. Shout it out. What?
Jack in the Box.
What's the brand?
Well, they have horrible tacos and I'm eating it because I've eaten my whole life.
Oh, so you associate something that you do. Okay. Family memories, did you say?
Joe, you
Okay.
need to repeat the question for the recording.
Oh, okay. I said, could you think of examples of good or bad brands? And your Jack in the Box was a good brand, right? Okay. Okay, Michael Jordan, Jack in the Box. Let me hear a few more. Sony. Back there? Okay, what's the feeling that you get from Sony?
High-tech,
High tech?
technological stuff that you need.
Can you say that last sentence?
Like, stuff that you need, like tech stuff, that's going to help you do whatever you need to do.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
McDonald's.
McDonald's. What feeling do you get?
That's what we can get if you're hungry, but also makes you fat.
So is that a good brand or a bad brand? In between. Okay. Okay, well, as you notice brands now, drive down the street and see what kind of feelings come up when you look at the brands, because you don't pay attention to those feelings, but you're being motivated by them. Okay, I like this quote by Philip Kotler. I don't know his name, but Philip Kotler, a Kellogg's executive, said, "If you are not a brand, you are a commodity. Then price is everything, and the low-cost producer is the only winner." Think about that for a minute. Excuse me? Do you see it now? Okay. So, emotion captivates the customer. It seems to follow then that the more emotion your product evokes through your brand, the more you're able to charge for your products. Absolute clarity on what the brand is the way to capture attention, imagination, and emotion of a consumer. Then the consumer participates in the company culture. They become loyal and devoted fans. I'm not going to get anything but an Apple product. I'm devoted to that. And they also become mini brand ambassadors, meaning they're out there selling and promoting your brand for you. And believe me, in the franchising business, you can't get enough mini brand ambassadors. So the second one is identity. What is identity? The Kahunas say identity is the visual aspects that form part of the overall brand. If the brand is the company personality capturing the emotion, then identity is the clothes or accessories that go with the personality. For example, if your personal brand was this nerdy guy, then your identity would be flood pants, pocket protector, horn-rimmed glasses, and a briefcase. Of course, horn-rimmed glasses are in now, I guess. Some examples of franchise business identity could be the color scheme of the store, your PR materials, labeling, font choices. Font choices are very important. The uniform, your product boxes, the pictures you hang on the wall. This is our catchphrase that we use for Maui Wowie, Hawaiian flavor, island attitude. That goes on just about everything. And this is a legend that we created about my husband and I and how we started the business. And this legend goes in every single store and on every single kiosk across the world. They're required to have that. So these are all identity pieces. We also require a display of fresh fruit. We require a paper parasol in every drink. And we require them to say aloha for every new customer. So the clearer your overall brand identity is, the more likely your business is to be remembered and to survive and thrive. It has to be clear to you. It has to be unique as well as consistently displayed in every aspect of your business. Now, we've gotten into a little bit of trouble in this because we hadn't, in the beginning, spelled it out really clearly, and we gave our franchisees the opportunity to make some choices. It's really hard to rein it back in when you've given them, you haven't done the work in advance to identify what your identity actually is. We have all these different models, and so it's important that we have identity pieces that we carry through each format. Make these decisions early and then stick to it. A sense of cohesion concerning your business, what you do, what you are, what your culture is very important in today's congested marketplace, believe me. Stick to it, too, after you've spelled it out. Okay. I talked to somebody who owns a clothing boutique about the identity, and she said that although they had a thriving clothing business, they grew bored of their identity, all their identity pieces and their brand, and they changed their name midstream and they changed their look. And they never recovered from this. The customer demands that a business knows who they are. Okay, the final one. Logo. What is logo? The Kahunas say a logo identifies a business in its simplest form via the use of a mark or icon. Logos use shape and color to instantly remind consumers of their brands. Logos exploit the fact that the brain processes shapes and colors faster than language. So why did I wait to the end to bring up the logo? Well, logos are only important after you establish your brand. They have nothing to do with establishing your brand, nothing at all. Even then, effective logos don't need to be these super-duper creative works of art about your product. That kind of marketing gobbledygook is for Madison Avenue overthinkers. Your logo is better off with just your name, using a creative and unique font presentation. And it's got to be cohesive with your brand. It also needs to be transferable from black and white to color, from computer to signage. Research indicates that a potential customer must be exposed to a product a minimum of 4 times before he remembers it. And the more complicated your logo is, the less apt he is to remember it. So here's a few tips from one marketing expert. Fonts. The most important element in your logo is a unique font presentation. It's not even necessary to have a graphic or an icon in your logo. Think of Google. They don't usually have a graphic. Insist that the designer use unique fonts that are not widely available and present them in a unique, unexpected way. Check the fonts loaded on Microsoft Word on your computer, and if it's there, don't use it. A good resource for creative fonts is myfonts.com, and make sure you find one that is scarce, and they're not very expensive. So number 2, the graphic element or icon. Do not let the graphic element of your logo be literal. For example, if you are a real estate company, You don't necessarily need to have a house on your logo. Or if you're a furniture company, you don't need a couch on your logo. Why? Because that's what people expect. The unexpected gets noticed. The expected does not. I think that's really an important sentence. I'm going to say it again. The unexpected gets noticed. The expected does not. Logo orientation. Number 3, determine how you'll use your logo and then specify the orientation accordingly. For example, if your logo is going to be on a website, make sure that it can transfer over into a signage as well. Signage for your store or in any other format. So know the shape before you start. Colors. Avoid multicolored logos. Shoot for 1 or 2 colors. They're cheaper and easier to reproduce. Do some color research, and then specify the colors that you want on your logo. Color matters in branding, so choose the colors based on your customer demographics and your brand promise. Now, logos can be updated over time, so you're not making a lifelong commitment. Here's an example of our first logo, which is kind of dorky, don't you think? It's a little childish. And then we evolved, and this is our latest logo. Now, you'll see that the font is pretty similar, and the palm trees for the eyes is the same. The background is pretty much what changed. Now, this is really important because it's part of the consistent branding, and your customer needs to be able to identify you even if they're in Saudi Arabia and it's in Arabic. See, they still have the palm trees. This is a mall in, I think, Saudi Arabia. Okay, you can expect people who try to discourage you in your ideas. In the business world, there's many naysayers and many poo-pooers, so just expect it. People sometimes seem to delight in predicting your financial demise. Listen to a few of these predictions of startup companies and dreamers. I think these are really interesting. After viewing the first Atari video game, an executive said, "No one will ever stand in front of a TV screen and play a game." Personal computers are just a fad was the prediction that IBM and Hewlett-Packard received, both of them. It's a cutthroat business and you've got absolutely no chance for success, said an accountant for Estee Lauder, founder of a multi-billion-dollar cosmetic company. You have a nice voice, but it's nothing special, was what a teacher said when she rejected Diana Ross after she auditioned for a part in a High School Musical. Do you know who Diana Ross is? Okay. And it wasn't the High School Musical, it was a High School Musical. Advisors to Fred Smith, founder of FedEx, said there's absolutely no market for it. So we've had our share of naysayers too. People who have said that the Wowie concept should never work. People told us that we need to buy cheaper ingredients, we need to change our name. You will never lack for amateur business advisors. Most of what we did starting out was just a guess, a gut instinct, and a hunch, but we did a few things right. We had a clear branding, we evolved a corresponding identity, and we had a logo that seemed to work. We made tons of mistakes and took huge financial risks. Now, if I were going to give the #1 requirement for success, I would have to say that it is the personal belief, your personal belief in what you're doing. I don't know anyone who built a strong business that believed that they were destined to fail. My son told me that Yoda did not say this, but I'm going with it. Yoda said, "You don't believe it. That's why you fail." So in conclusion, I just want to talk about your dream. Walt Disney is one of our favorite dreamers. He said, "Mickey Mouse popped out of my mind and onto a drawing pad 20 years ago on a train ride from Manhattan to Hollywood, at a time when business fortunes of my brother Roy and myself were at the lowest ebb and disaster seemed right around the corner. And at a different time and on a different train, J.K. Rowling, British novelist, best known as the author of what? Harry Potter, was a single mother when she had only completed the first 3 chapters of her novel. She was clinically depressed. She described herself and her economic state as being as poor as it is possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless. She called herself the biggest failure I knew. But then she got on a train. She said, "I sat and thought for 4 long delayed train hours, and all the details bubbled up in my brain. And this scrawny, black-haired, bespectacled boy who didn't know he was a wizard became more and more real to me." My son told me that he read that she actually saw in her mind's eye Harry walking past her on the train. In a recent commencement speech, Rowling said, "Why do I talk about the benefits of failure? Simply because failure meant a stripping away of the inessential. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was, and began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work that ever mattered to me. Had I really succeeded at anything else, I might never have found the determination to succeed in the only arena I believed I truly belonged. I was set free because my greatest fear had been realized, and I was still alive. And I had a daughter whom I adored, and I had an old typewriter and a big idea. And so rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life." In 2004, Forbes magazine named Rowling as the first person to become a billionaire by writing books. Steve Jobs said, "Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice." We need to eliminate the clutter of the constant entertainment and overstimulation we get, including myself, from our iPhones, iPads, and computers. It kills creativity. We all need to get on a train, so to speak, to stare out the window and dream. If you do this, you will be amazed at the inspiration you'll receive. This inspiration is directed exclusively and specifically to you. It is your purpose and your individual mission. If you follow it, your life will become your personal dream come true. So get on a train, climb a mountain or a volcano, sit on the beach and stare out into the vast ocean. It just might be the greatest work that you'll ever do. Allow your idea to surface. Once it does, get really clear on every aspect of it. Put it on paper in great detail. If it's a business idea, identify the personality by creating your brand. Once you've done that, get really, really clear on the identity or the accessories of your idea. And finally, create your logo. When you have clarified all these details, you will be ready to jump and to launch into your own business. I have to admit that our business did not evolve this way. It is only in looking back that we've gained some wisdom. Our idea developed through a serendipitous path. We didn't know where we were going because we'd never seen it done before, but we stayed true to our brand. Fantasy writer J.R. Tolkien said, "A single dream is more important than 1,000 realities." So for heaven's sakes, have a dream. Thank you.
Going to take a couple questions?
I don't think we have time, do we?
We're pretty much out of time. You know what? If there's 2 questions, stay up here just for a second.
Okay.
2 questions, maybe 1, depending on how long the answer is. Any questions?
You start a company in Utah?
Yes. Yes, we just pretended we were from Hawaii.
Company in
Yeah.
Utah. Okay.
We try to keep that part quiet.
Others? Okay, we'll see you here next week. Paul Wilson will be speaking here again next week. So.